welcome to VIM Chats with me, Farida, Hanim, in this very new series of VIM Chats. So previously, our format was that we made a podcast session and it was in audio form. So to upgrade the level of podcast series, we made it in a video style this time around. So for those of you who don't know, VIM Chats is a platform for any youth or anyone out there, Malaysians, to voice out opinions and to share their thoughts on any topic that are related to Malaysia. For example, nation buildings, it can be politics, economics, anything. So this is the first episode. Catch us once, we are going to make hopefully one episode every 2 weeks. Today with me we have two very lovely guests. On my right is Mr. Arman, Muhammad Arman bin Iskandar. He's an economics graduate. Currently is working. He is passionate in debating and also in nation building. Is there anything more you want to add for yourself?
That's enough for now.
Okay, that's enough for now. You're going to see more after this. And on my left is Mr. Maran.
Nathan Maran.
Okay, let's pronounce yourself.
Okay, it's Nathan Maran, yeah.
Nathan Maran. He's an economics graduate. Sorry, he's a law graduate. He's a law graduate. Currently working as well. Also an amateur filmmaker. So check out his channel as well. We're gonna put all of their social media link down there after this. Should be in the description, like that. Okay. All right. So without further ado, as the title shows, our topic for today is going to be on youth involvement in politics. Especially when we just celebrate the amendment of constitution regarding Undi 18, where they just changed the voting age from 21 to 18. This is a very big step because even in Parliament themselves, we get full votes, right? And everyone in the Parliament actually voted for it, except for those few of them who didn't came. Recently, we just changed the constitution when we amend the age voting from 21 to 18. It was a unanimous decision in the Parliament, so we're going to talk about that more after this. Before we start, I'm just going to give one trivia question, and we're going to give the answer on next episode. So if you have the answer with you, comment on the comment section below, and if you got it right, we're going to shout out your name on the next episode. So is that cool? That should be cool. Alright, so the question is, Merdeka Center actually made a survey regarding Malaysian youth views on politics. So the question is, when they ask the youth, do you think politicians care about voters like you? How many percent say yes, how many percent say no, and how many percent is unsure? So the question is, do you think politicians care about voters like you? How many percent say yes, how many percent say no, and how many percent actually unsure? So comment on the link, comment section below, then hopefully you get the answer right next week. So without further ado, let's just jump right into the topic. Who should I ask for? Arman, for example.
Okay, sure.
Do you agree that, given the topic, do you agree that youth at the age of 18, so probably since high school, need to be aware, need to be well understood about how politics work and the political nation and the political culture in our country?
So first of all, I think there's a lot of things that we have to think about when it comes to politics. And one thing that, in my opinion, you'd have to know or understand is that politics is an everyday life. It's your education, it's your daily life, it's the economy, it's whatever that affects you as an individual, even though it's indirectly, meaning that it might affect your parents and further on affects you, it is politics. So in order to know all the things that affects you, you should know on how such political decisions work, or how does it come about. And one of the process towards understanding that is to understand how do we elect those politicians that make the decisions for you. And this means that in order for us to operate as, it doesn't matter if you're 18, right? It matters that if at any age at all, if you're able to understand that, or able to be taught what is politics and how it works, I think definitely it should be taught. Yeah.
I see. So are we saying that politics is the main thing or the main tools for nation building? Are we giving this message to the youth? Like, I'll give the answer to another.
Okay, so when you come to nation building, I don't think it only belongs to I don't think it's the responsibility of only a certain group of people. Hence the term nation building. You know, we are building it together as a nation. So youth, inadvertently, they are and they will be involved in politics, because as what Amran said just now, politics revolves around everyday life. You know, it touches on policies that relates to education, it touches on policies that relates to economy, it touches on policies that relates to, you know, the social welfare of the citizens of any country for that matter. So I mean, you know, it is. I was actually quite shocked and surprised to see. Although it is very questionable whether the opposition parties were doing it for political mileage or not, I'm not sure. You should ask them. But it was very shocking to me to see that they, it was a show of bipartisanship, you know, when both sides of the divide of the house, when, you know, they came together and said, look, we agree, you know, to amend the federal constitution. I think the previous amendment was in 2007. So this current amendment to change the voting age from 21 to 18. So it was very pleasantly surprising to me that, you know, the opposition members of the House decided to lower the voting age. I was a bit, to be honest, I was a bit skeptical when this decision was made. I mean, although I was, you know, I was championing for, you know,
Undi 18.
Undi 18. I was championing the fact, saying that, you know what, 18 years old, you should be able to vote. But I've also heard of other concerns. Some of them were from my family members, some of them were from people outside, you know, saying, why should 18 years old vote?
Yeah.
You know, what gives them the experience, what gives them they say they're politically immature, but when I put it out to them, politically immature can also apply to people who are above 18, you know. It doesn't necessarily have to be people who are, you know, 18 or younger. So I would really want to know what's actually making them believe that 18-year-olds are not ready to vote. Perhaps, okay, number one, the point maybe being they don't have a working experience yet. Plus, maybe their vote, or maybe a group of, you know, now since I don't know how many % of 18-year-olds are going to be there next year.
We don't know yet.
Yeah. So I mean, let's say about 40% of them, I think, who are going to be eligible to vote in the next general election. So let's say with so much of votes, how is it going to affect the working people who are already out there working? You know, their decision, you know, their thinking of youngsters and thinking of adults are different, you see. So I would really want to know what their concern is, and probably work around our way. And, you know,
I'm not sure would that change much, because currently it's 21 years old, right? And most of 21 years old Malaysians are not even working yet. Would that even bring much change? Now, my question is, so normally when we talk about politics, we talk about also so much like rhetorics and false janji palsu, where all these false promises, just for the sake of getting votes. And also, given the current situation of Malaysian politics, where like rhetoric was being used, you know, for example, so much sentiments, race sentiments, religion sentiments are being used. Do you think our youth are ready to accept all of this? Because even like the adults, right, like people in their 30s, in their 40s, they're not matured when discussing about politics. It's very emotional. It's very there's a lot of emotions into it compared to a really constructive discussion. So what do you have to say about that?
I think one thing that is really important to point out is that just because it's emotion-based or just because it's race-based doesn't mean that it is not a valid concern. Doesn't mean that it shouldn't be in politics. If, for example, you have parties that run on racial-based ideologies and racial-based policies, and it is very important for all sides to consider that is there a legitimate reason or why this is being pushed forward. And if you're able to have that discussion, whether something is legitimate or not, and you're able to come to an understanding whether is this kind of policy that we want to push forward, it really doesn't matter whether you're 18 and you're emotionally driven, or whether you're 23 or you're analytically driven. Because you have, I think it was mentioned before, there is a certain level of concerned that even people above 18 years old or even 21 or 50 who are emotionally driven, right? But even if like you watch all the interviews regarding people who talk about, let's say, if they vote for party X, Y, Z, and they comment on specific policies that they're making, you can see that they don't quite understand the whole policy at the end of the day. But what they do understand is the emotional impact that they have towards them. And I think that just because it's emotional doesn't make it invalid. And the fact that you can't accept that an adult who is above 21 years old and accept whatever their emotion that they're feeling as a legitimate reason to whatever the cause they vote, I don't see why that suddenly, because you're 18 years old, then suddenly emotion doesn't make sense to you, right? Because even if you're 25, you might have an emotion of a 13-year-old, but doesn't mean it's invalid.
True. But then the discussion here, also I agree with that, is like a youth good enough, like matured enough to discuss this, especially when they're gonna start talk about this even in high school now. Would that be a kind of like education environment that we want for a 17 years old kid to already start discussing about politics? Oh, my parents vote for this, my parents vote for this, and is that actually a good way when it comes to like uniting?
Yeah, so okay, when you're asking me, right, to be honest, I was politically aware since I was 13 years old.
Ooh, how about
Yeah, so because honestly speaking, because because when I was 13, so it was the 2008 general elections. 2008, I was 13 years old. So at that time, it was that's when the current government, back then it was PKR. They were gaining traction among members of the public. They were gaining traction, and so the heat was going on. It was the discussion was at home. And then you look at the TV, and then you hear stories from family members of things that that purportedly happens behind closed doors. So this thing kind of intrigues you. It makes you feel very interested to know more. So that's when I started getting very involved in getting up to date with the news. Okay, what's happening? Who's this politician? What scandal is he run into? And things like that. So those kind of things that makes me feel very interested. So when you talk about whether should it be involved, whether should youngsters in school talk about these things? Well, yeah, probably. It's a topic of discussion. Even because back then teachers do talk about it to us. So when teachers themselves talk about it to their students, then it becomes open discussion. So there's no filter. There's no limit to say, oh, you can't talk beyond this. You can't talk beyond that. So as I was saying, so since I was involved in this thing, since I was politically aware since I was 13 years old, I do accept and agree that you can discuss about this since high school. You can discuss about it in high school with your friends, because the same example that you just quoted about my father voted for this, my mother voted, the same thing happened to me when I was 13. So for all the
okay.
It's okay, because it's not. You cannot avoid what's happening. You can't stop what's happening in front of you and not talk about it. We all know what's happening, and you can't say like, oh, you can't talk about this, because it's happening. You are bound to have questions. If you don't have questions, then you're rather better being a rock or a stone. You're not going to ask questions of what's happening. So I think it allows students from such a young age to somehow come up with solutions. The Twitter memes saying modern problems requires modern solutions.
True.
So so modern times requires modern solutions, and you'll be shocked to see what youngsters and what young people can come up with what solutions. So yeah.
I think to add a bit on that, I think one thing that we have to think about when we want to talk about should high school kids learn about these things, right? It is not just simply about showing them few political videos and let them have a discussion, right? That's not going to happen. That might happen outside of school.
Yeah.
So when you look at school and all this very formal and structured education, you're looking at other subjects like sciences or maths and all, even economy is being taught in school, right? What do they teach there is not necessarily things that you will use in the future. But what it does is that it prepares you in a journey with the ability and knowledge enough for you to make a rational decision, for you to opt in to those things. For example, let's say I was in high school and I took pure maths. I don't use physics, I don't use bio, but the knowledge is there for me to decide on. Let's say, for example, if I want to pursue medical, and then biology is already being taught to me. And the funny thing is that we teach them all of these different subjects that they can choose to. And then once they graduate high school, it doesn't mean that they are going to use all of this, they're probably going to pick one. But somehow politics, which is what they're going to definitely be involved in once they graduate, is not being taught to them. And you have to look at the things that, what are we teaching them, right? It could, good luck to the current Minister of Education, but the kind of things that can be taught to them is just as simple as what is the political structure of Malaysia. How do you vote?
Exactly.
Yes. And how many people do you vote for, and what parties, and how do you elect a prime minister? Because I want to point one thing really interesting is that I was in Scouts when I was in high school, and one of the log books that we had to do involved a lot of how does the politics in Malaysia work. We learned about the parliament, we learned about the what do you call that, the Raja Perlembagaan, and we learn about how do you vote. And all these things are things that are already being taught to students just informally within certain societies or certain uniform bodies. Why not make it a proper syllabus, which can only be done in high school?
Even then, when you're talking about proper syllabus, it is in Pendidikan Civic dan Kewarganegaraan.
Exactly,
in my honest opinion, which is a very useless subject. I have no idea in regards to its existence, because first and foremost, it's a subject that serves. I mean, it has very good contents. It has very good syllabus, but it's not stressed upon. And this is the same answers we get from politicians or from educationists when you say, when you ask them to introduce, topics of election, prime minister, how do you elect a prime minister, the parliament and whatnot. They say, oh, because kan parliament, pendidikan civic dah ada apa and all that. That's a very lazy answer, because as you know, how many of you youth or teenagers out there take so seriously this subject, pendidikan civic? You're barely not in class. I wasn't in class.
Yeah, you were sleeping, right?
No, I was out of class. I mean, it is a subject that is not stressed upon.
Okay.
But then the next question comes. So how do we make it interesting?
Yeah.
Then perhaps make it a compulsory subject where you have to pass. Then students are forced to know this. So that's one way of making it making it compulsory for students to learn. Then again, you might ask, don't students have so many subjects? Then that's the education ministry's problem, to solve and fix this issue. Perhaps make it a a subtopic within the history subject. I don't know. Although
it is actually, if I may, we do actually learn a bit on how
that's the
constitution
problem.
works.
It's a bit.
In the history book, it's actually one chapter of it. But who remembers histories, right? Especially high school history.
I do know.
You guys mentioned a lot on how there's so much subjects that was introduced in high schools. In school in general, but actually it wasn't get stressed upon, like Pendidikan Civic and all. It's actually a very important subject that teaches manners, but for some reason, students just don't have interest in it. Are we going to say that it's purely, is this something that should be only the responsible of the school and the Ministry of Education, or it should also be something that was introduced by the family, meaning that the family also create this environment of talking about politics? Is that healthy as well? Like, are we gonna make sure that even in home this topic of politics is introduced? Because currently, if you ask your parents about, especially if you're 15, right, and if you ask parents about politics, they'll be like, oh no lah, don't bother to ask, you can't even vote anymore. So will that also change right now?
That's actually not true. You might say that parents don't talk about politics with children, which is, to me personally, it's kind of a myth. You go to any houses, and then parents just, over dinner, for example, and your parents just say that, and then you're watching the news, and then there's some minister talking of it, or maybe they're reporting about some racial-induced riots or anything of that nature. And you notice that the first thing that comes out of your parents' mouth is not that, oh, the world is such a bad place. No, it's always something quite specific to what is being shown. For example, if you have a racial news being, let's say a racial riot, for example, is being portrayed in the news on TV over dinner, you probably say like XYZ stupid,
Yeah.
right? Or ni sebab XYZ minister.
Yeah.
Or this is because itulah bagi lagi diorang hak. And this is the kind of conversation that you don't notice happening, but it is happening. And this is the kind of implicit biases or implicit political input that the parents are giving to their children. And the reason why we need this to be taught in schools is to provide that counter check or that provide a counterbalance. It is not as easy for us to police what parents tell to the children, right? If you look, for example, in the recent any what do you call them? Any gatherings of people or any what do you call that?
Events.
Any events? No,
Like family gathering, or is it?
No. Like you have those perarakan
Marching.
Marching.
the marchings, right? And the marchings and all the I can't find the right word for it, right? But all these marchings you see, for example, maybe Bersih, or maybe even
political rallies.
Rallies, yes, that's the word, right? So any rallies that you see happening, children are always being brought along by their parents.
I agree.
And they're not
Probably because they don't have anyone to take care of.
maybe, right? Or maybe because the parents see it's a responsibility to instill the particular knowledge about politics to people. But the thing is, if your argument is that they're not wise enough, then you see them being brought around everywhere by parents who are probably the same people who say that these children shouldn't be voting.
Alright.
So regardless whether, so it's wrong to think that children are not being exposed to politics when parents talk about them most of the time and they don't even know anything about it. The school acts as a mechanism to provide this counterbalance that is neutral in nature to allow children to be exposed to how does politics actually work in Malaysia. And that kind of knowledge or that kind of lesson can be taught in such a way that is not biased to any political party, that is not biased to any political ideologies. And
That
I think
also is
it's
very
important.
important when they like create the syllabus, right? For them not to be like biased to any parties.
To look at it as a system rather than being politically inclined.
Yeah.
Yes, correct.
Also, I mean, to add on that, I might have a little contrasting view because not every family will be very, will have, I wouldn't say facility, I would say probably because not every family has the opportunity to talk about politics.
I agree.
Because you have also people, who are not well-to-do and hence, they have less communication with each other. I mean, the parents would have to actually, slog and, work and things like that. So they wouldn't have enough time to meet their children to even talk about it. Rather, they won't even care about politics because they're busy finding money for their kids. They're busy finding, food to put at the table. Also, to add a little bit more is that the fact that I come from a family like. So when we have like family gatherings and family dinners, we have 30 people in one house and things like that. So we have a mixture of government servants and people who work in the private sectors. So, so I've literally heard concerns from my family members who are working in the government sector. They say, oh, let's not talk about politics, I'm afraid. Something might happen. Oh, I'm only going to vote for who I've been voting since I got the license to vote. I cannot vote. What if they find out who did I vote
Somehow,
for?
as if you know.
As if you know. So this fear was actually it's a very ridiculous fear because being a government servant, you have every legal right to vote whoever you want to vote.
You especially have the right.
That's your only civil right to do what you can do.
Yeah.
So you see, so that fear has always been there. And also that's why I said like not every family would have the freedom to talk about politics, and not every kid would grow up knowing about politics and things like that. So
that's also different when it comes to the place that you live in.
Yes, true.
People in like
Definitely
the urban class people probably
would have more
access
opportunity,
and more coverage over the topic, but not necessarily people that live in the rural part of the country, right? And these are the kids and the youth that we are targeting, those who do not have the access, because like what Arman said, if your parents already bring you to, like, for example, birthday rally, then you might have more political awareness, but not everyone has such opportunity. So, like, okay, let's move forward. When we talk about youth involvement, what kind of involvement are we talking about? Are we encouraging, when we say that you can vote on 18, meaning that you can probably bertanding. You can also contest in the election. Are we also promoting this, like, when it comes to?
I'll let you go the first.
How involved should you be, like, based on your personal opinion? Like?
So understanding. So back to the root of what voting is, right? So democracy is all about rights. As much as you have the right to be involved, you also have the right to not be involved. Doesn't matter if you're automatically registered as a voter or you don't register yourself until today. It's up to you because it's a right. And that also means is that if you believe in a particular value or you believe in a particular ideology or policies, and you feel as if it should be spearheaded by you as an 18-year-old, do that. Then the next level comes is whether or not a political party is willing to accept you as a frontrunner of that particular ideology, or do they feel as if they should probably put forward someone with a little bit more experience. It is a completely fair concern. You cannot just pick someone out of the blue and then just have them run for office and then expect them to excel at it. Unless probably you're Sadiq, right? No particular experience, does really well right now in the Ministry of Youth and Sports. And that is not always the case.
True.
That is probably a one-time thing. Or it could be credited to be, it might happen a lot more frequent in the future once the youth have a little bit more exposure. Well, what I'm saying is that it is not easy for us to just say that because you're 18, you should go forward and run for office. Or because you're 18, you shouldn't run for office. We really have to look at the capacity of an individual who wants to run for that particular office. Right? For example, if you have been exposed since you were young, since you were high school, for example, you have joined, you've been an activist in this issue, and all the other different issues that may happen. Probably you are more politically mature for you to run for an organization, or for you to run a ministry, and you have that ability to lead people. Probably because you're 18, that you've been playing games your whole high school, having fun with your friends, and you don't have political maturity. But we also recognize that in politics, your rights is your daily life is being affected, so you should have a say in it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do you have
So I may say something that's contrasting with what Arman has just said. Probably I do think that there should be a bar because so let's say, for example, the current age to participate in politics, to contest in a election is 21. Yes, 20. I think that should remain. That's my opinion. Anyone's opinion could be anything else, but that's my opinion. Because, as a school leaver, as I said, you may have the political knowledge. You may be politically aware of things that's happening around the country and whatnot. And I'm totally in for Undi 18, and yes, it's a good movement. But to be able to vote to be able to participate in an election at the age of 18, then I would bring in the point of experience. Because yes, you are going to have people around to help you. You can be, whoever you are. You can be, an experienced person in whatever things that you do. But if you don't have that necessary experience of having dealt with people, having to deal with how to have a conversation with someone, or how to communicate with someone in terms of a simple dealing with someone. So I'm not sure if you would have had all that. So just to be fair to everyone, have a little experience for yourself, and then when you reach that age 21, then you're free to go and contest in an election or do whatever you want. So that's my opinion.
I think it's very case-to-case basis.
Yeah, it's very case-to-case basis.
Very kind of person you are.
Yeah. And I think, like, to add on to that, I think because it's a case-to-case basis, why I would be okay with removing the bar of 21, because political parties are strategic, right?
Yeah.
They're not suicidal and putting some random kid to run for office. No one's going to vote for them. But when you have people who have been involved in all forms of activism, like let's take climate for example, and you have Greta Thunberg, and you have such an incredible.
Is she 14 or 15?
I think around that age, right? She's having such an incredible presence in pushing for environmentalism, And if, let's say, if we were lucky enough that she was to be Malaysian, and you have a political party that is interested in climate change.
You might have met Maran one day.
Yeah, maybe, right? Yeah, we never know. And if you already have that much, I would say, influence and presence in a particular issue, it should be completely okay for a political party to put it forward. I'm given that I understand that the concern is experience, right?
Yeah.
So with the concern of experience, I don't think the bar should be 21, and it should be merit-based. If you have been involved in something political in nature, and you have had the experience of pushing for something forward, and I definitely think that you should be.
Also, another reason why I said that, because right now, just a few months ago, we did have a scandal among ministers having no degree certificates from university. So I mean, to be fair, to be fair to everyone, I mean, if they can work at a they are the minister in charge of the ministry, and to probably have, let's say, somebody. I mean, obviously, you're not going to become a minister. That's under the prime minister's, prerogative. But to become someone who's even in charge of a constituent, because I've had an experience working at a constituent office before, so I do know the workload of a member of parliament. I do know how many people he has to meet on a daily basis, how many how many constituents, how many problems that he has to listen on a day-to-day basis, and how he has to allocate the budget for this and that, and it's a mounting task. Unless we are going to have an emotional breakdown of a teenager, it's not going to help. His officers or her officers are just going to excuse me, I know we need answers. I mean, that's my, that's my opinion. So because I do know how the work of a member of parliament is.
Yeah.
So
because normally you do match it through experience, right?
Yeah,
Most people
that's
like that.
right.
Not everyone is you're very well gifted to be matched.
Yeah, sure. That's my take. So yeah,
It's very good.
I think we both have a fair point here. So before we end, I'm gonna ask this one more question, or actually a few more questions, but let's go with this one question because I think everyone is interested. Do you think parents will definitely influence their children to vote for a certain party, or will children definitely vote for the party that their parents vote in? Because that's normally the case here. Okay. So because there's also a study that say that when voting age from 21 is reduced to 18, you get more parents to actually go out for vote for some reason. I don't know, because maybe parents suddenly become responsible and they need to send their children to vote or whatever. But yeah, what's your take on that?
Okay, so I can give an answer on a personal level. I can give an answer on a personal basis. So at my home, I'm actually the one influencing people. Yeah,
I'm sure.
because as I said, I was politically aware since 2008. So growing up, learning and knowing the political structure in Malaysia and knowing which political parties are getting the traction and which political parties are doing things for the better and things like that. So when you look at my family, and some of them are very politically aware. They have these arguments and discussions at home. But some of them, as I said, they're quite reserved. They think let's just keep voting for whoever we want to vote. Because one of my aunties, she was even afraid that if we were to vote for the wrong party, May 13 might even happen again. So she was already indoctrinated with that idea. So hence she was very afraid to even let alone discuss about the topic. She said, at the night of our election, since it's the results were till 4 a.m. in the morning. And hearing all these news about, there was going to be a Majlis Gerakan Negara and everything. Darurat and all that stuff. So half of my family members are locking the gate, blocking the grill, let's stay in and not go out. And so, but me and my dad is very much, we have discussions on politics. We are quite, he's quite open in asking me questions and stuff like that. So as I said, I was the one influencing people. So the last general election, I was able to convince one of my relatives who was working for the government, then the previous government, now the current government, to vote for change. Because she finally took that step, because change was already spreading around. The vibe for a change has been already spreading around. So I think in my personal level, I feel that to vote who you want to. I think that happens because I'm the one influencing. But yes, I do. So yeah, I do think it happens. Yeah. So parents sometimes do influence their children on who to vote. Sometimes not. Yeah. So I can only give an account based on what has happened in my home.
Will you actually vote based on what, or like will they actually from scratch finding who is the best, who has the best policy for them to vote, or will they just like like what you say, discuss with their parents and probably go with what they choose?
Possibilities happen both, right? So if you have a bright young mind like Nathan, then you'll probably be able to have a conversation with your parents and influence them on which direction you think is best. And as a parent, as much as they are concerned about their future, they also will take into account what you see as a child. Whether they take it or not, that's a different case, but they probably put themselves out to hear about it.
Yeah.
If not, they will just, put their feet down and ask you to vote certain parties. But even then, you still have the right to to just lie about it.
To follow and lie.
To follow or not.
You can just say, I vote for this, but you actually vote
exactly.
for that.
So I think at the end of the day, as much as you want to say that there's a possibility of parents influencing children, I do not think that is the biggest concern.
Yes.
The biggest concern to me,
Yeah,
exactly. The biggest concern to me is it's preparing the youth enough for them to be able to think critically and make decisions on their own. Because I think it falls back down to what politics is about democracy at the end of the day. It's your voice. So if you are a person who's very conservative and you really want to adopt, for example, I'm just going to use an example of, let's say you want to adopt the Islamic way of life. Your choice to vote for a party that represents that, it's a fair and legitimate choice that you can make because that's your voice. As much as it is for a person who does not want to go the Islamic way and move for a more neutral way, a more secular way, as much as you want to vote for another party that has different values and different religious or whatever ideology they want to bring.
Race values.
Exactly. But the point is that we need to be able to make the youth think critically and have their own opinion, even though it might be influenced by other people, but have their own opinion. Because the only time that you're able to engage with them, debate with them, is if they have an opinion and they have a reason to that opinion. Because, just use Twitter example, right? You engage with anyone on Twitter, and the moment you ask them, justify that decision, or justify that cause, or what
Arman is famous on Twitter,
and you ask them to justify the idea, it's either they don't reply to you, either they just say that, kau lah bodoh, and then it just ends there.
I've used that sometimes. when I find their point, when I find their point to be extremely, it's really bodoh to be honest. And I can't argue back, so that's how I end my tweet.
You never win if you argue on Twitter, like can't win.
Yeah, and that instance happens a lot. I'm not sure if I'm engaging with a person or a bot, but it doesn't matter, right? But the point is that when these people are able to have their own opinions and have their own justifications for that, you can then evaluate whether it's a legitimate idea or legitimate reasoning, or is it just some flimsy idea that you're thrown by some other person who's just telling you, okay, whenever someone asks you this, say this, and they're just followers. Because these are the people, regardless whether you're 18, doesn't mean that when you reach 21, suddenly you're not that anymore. Critical thinking is something that you teach them from the start, and they'll carry it till the future. Because we still have people following whatever the leaders say, even when they're 21 or when they're 30 or 35.
50.
Even 50, right? Some people are attracted by short-term cash handout. Some people are excited by fancy promises. And all these things can only be tackled with the voters who are able to think critically about whatever they're being fed to them.
It's very important. I think also when youth are aware of all of this politics and how it works and democracy, then we also can have like politicians and all parties become more pressured, because now you cannot use rhetorics and you cannot use like false promises anymore, because people know how it works, and especially
they're smarter now.
Right? You can't fool us. So I think everyone is excited to see how it's going to work like 5 years from now, 10 years from now, right? The generation that are brought up by this political knowledge with them, and hopefully will, because of that, will change the political structure and the current, how it works now. So I think, okay, let me just give one more survey. So based on one survey, actually youth political participation in Malaysia among the Commonwealth country are ranked at the 47 out of 51 country. So it's very bad. So we are 47 out of 51 country when it comes to youth involvement in politics. So that is my last, this is going to be my last question to end this. What would be your best personal solution to this for you? Or like, even if it's not a solution, because you already discussed quite full solution just now, what is your last say to youngsters out there and even parents out there when it comes to youth involvement in politics? Let's start with...
I'll keep it short. Okay.
Short and sweet.
Yeah, short and sweet. So being involved in politics can mean a lot of things. So number one, yes, you can volunteer. You can get yourself involved, get yourself, be a part of a certain movement, of a certain, be a part of change and everything. Yes, you can lend your support and do all that. Be politically involved, fine. But there is, I think, as youth, this is my opinion. Then again, there comes a certain limit. I think when you tend to do things, that might actually draw your attention away from the real purpose of why you are doing it. Sometimes some youth might, we are young people, and we can be sometimes very vulnerable. Sometimes some youth might be involved in politics for the wrong reasons. They might be involved for money. And politics is not one place where you want to get fast money, because as much fast you can get money, you can lose it very fast.
You're not supposed to get rich from politics.
Yeah. So don't become...
That's also the kind of mentality you want to change, right?
Yeah, that's the thing. So a lot of people think, not join politics, you become rich faster. Well, you can become poor very fast as well. So,
that is true.
That's my thing. So know what you're getting yourself into and be sure of it. At the same time, keep yourself grounded. Yeah, that's what I can say.
Right, thank you so much, Nathan. What about you, Arman?
My take on the youth going into politics, it's one, start with yourself and all the skills that you think is necessary for you. And this is particularly important because I really want you to be able to have control over your own worldview, and for you to have the control over your opinions, and for you to have your justifications as an individual who's trying to practice democracy, right? And from there, then you will be able to engage with the people around you and influence them, or at least have a healthy discussion with the people around you, like your family, your friends, or anyone close to you. And start there. Like, you don't have to think about you have to join this political party, you have to join this activism, you don't. Just start with yourself. Change your worldview, change your opinion on things. Be flexible to engagement and be flexible to any form of discourses that might make you uncomfortable, but just know the fact that this engagement is making you a better person, because it forces you to think whether 17 years or 18 years of you being brought up, are these actually your opinions, or are these just indoctrinations that are being passed on to you, like how it was being passed to your parents before this. Know what you know and take control of that. And that is in being involved in politics.
Thank you so much, also, Arman. So I think that's the end of it. I had a very great discussion. I also hope both of you had a very great discussion as well.
I did.
Thank you so much, Arman, also Nathan, for this very constructive discussion. I hope we had more kind of discussion like this after this. On the topic of youth involvement in politics, if you have more suggestions, do comment down below on the comment section. And if we think your comment is actually really, really good, we might feature it in our VIM Chats on Twitter. So make sure you comment down below. Also, if you want to be the guest in future episodes, or if you have new topics that you think are very important to be talk about, then also mention that on the suggestion comment down below. Before I forgot, let me just quickly go back to the trivia question that you have to answer next week, that we're going to reveal the answer next week. The question is, do you think politicians care about voters like you? So comment down below how many percent say yes, how many percent say no, and how many percent is unsure. Don't forget to like this video and subscribe to this new YouTube channel. I hope I'm a mature YouTuber like after this.
You're there, you're getting there.
I'm getting there, right? Okay, so before we end it, one more time, let's share our tagline. Everyone have a voice? Share yours.